The wind never stops on a Mongolian steppe. It howls across endless grasslands, carving the earth into something raw, unforgiving alive. This is not a place where empires are born. This is a place where people disappear. And yet, in the year 1162, near the cold waters of the Onan River, a child entered this brutal world, gripping a clot of blood in his tiny fist. The elders saw it as a sign, not of peace, not of prosperity, but of war. His name was Temüjin, and one day, the world would tremble at another name, Genghis Khan. But before he became a conqueror, he was nothing. A world without mercy. Temüjin was born into a fractured land. There was no Mongolia as we know it today. No nation, no unity, only tribes, dozens of them, each one fighting for survival on land that offered almost nothing. The Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, the Karites, all locked in a constant cycle of betrayal, raids, revenge, and blood. Life here was simple and brutal. You lived or you were erased. Families didn't measure wealth in gold or land. They measured it in animals. Horses meant survival. Sheep meant food. Camels meant mobility. Lose your herd, and you lost your future. From the moment they could stand, children were trained for survival. By age 3, they rode horses. By 5, they could shoot arrows at full gallop. There was no childhood, only preparation. The first fall. Temüjin's early life wasn't easy, but it wasn't hopeless either. His father, Yasuji, was a minor tribal leader. Not powerful, but respected. That respect meant protection. And in the steppe, protection was everything. At 9 years old, Temüjin was taken to find a future bride, a common tradition used to build alliances. Her name was Borte, strong, sharp, and destined to become far more important than anyone realized. The arrangement was made. The future was set. But fate had other plans. On his way home, Yasuji encountered an old enemy tribe, the Tatars. They welcomed him, fed him, smiled at him, and then they poisoned him. By the time he reached home, he was dying. Temüjin never got to say goodbye. Abandoned To died the moment Yasuji died. Everything changed. Power in Mongol society wasn't inherited. It wasn't protected by law. It was personal, and without a strong leader, a family meant nothing. The tribe that once followed his father did something unthinkable. They left, packed their belongings, took their animals, and abandoned Temüjin, his mother, and his siblings to die. Just like that. No protection, no resources, no future. Survival at the edge. What followed were years of absolute desperation. They didn't live. They endured. They ate roots, wild berries, anything they could find. They hunted rats, caught fish with bare hands. Sometimes they went days without food. Winter nearly killed them. Summer offered no relief. Temüjin watched his younger siblings cry from hunger. Watched his mother fight to keep them alive. Watched the world prove one lesson over and over again. No one is coming to save you. The first kill. Starvation changes people. It strips away softness, leaves only instinct. One day, Temüjin's half-brother stole food. Just a fish. Something small. But in a world where survival balanced on the edge, it was everything. Temüjin didn't argue. He didn't forgive. He hunted him down and killed him with his own hands. When he returned, his mother was horrified. She saw something dangerous growing inside her son. Something irreversible. But Temüjin didn't feel guilt. He felt clarity. Anyone who threatened survival must be removed, no matter who they are. Chains and escape. As Temüjin grew, so did fear around him. Other tribes remembered the prophecy at his birth. They saw potential, and potential meant threat. So they acted. Temüjin was captured, humiliated, a wooden collar locked around his neck, displayed like an animal. A warning. This is what happens to those who rise. But they made one mistake. They underestimated him. One night, while his captors celebrated, Temüjin struck. He escaped into the darkness, hid beneath river water, breathing through reeds, waiting, silent, unseen. A man from the enemy tribe found him, could have turned him in. Instead, he let him go, gave him a horse, saved his life. Temüjin never forgot this, Because he understood something powerful. Loyalty isn't born for blood. It's earned. Building from nothing, Temüjin returned home. But he was no longer the same boy. He didn't want survival anymore. He wanted power. He started small, gathering followers, outcasts, warriors with no place to belong, men who had nothing and wanted everything. And here, Temüjin did something revolutionary. He ignored tradition, didn't care about noble blood, didn't care about lineage. He promoted based on ability, loyalty, skill. If you were strong, you rose. If you were weak, you were left behind. This idea would change everything. Love and loss again, Temüjin married Borte, the girl from his childhood promise. But happiness didn't last. The Merkits attacked, seeking revenge for something his father had done years earlier. They kidnapped Borte, took her away. For Temüjin, this wasn't just loss. It was war. The first alliance, Temüjin did what he had learned to do best. He built alliances. He called on powerful leaders, old connections, even a childhood friend, Jamuka. Together, they raised an army, and they struck back. Fast, brutal, unforgiving. They crushed the Merkits, rescued Borte, but she returned pregnant, and no one knew whose child it was. Temüjin accepted the child anyway, publicly, without hesitation. But the doubt never truly disappeared. The beginning of something greater after that victory, something shifted. People started noticing. This wasn't just another tribal leader. This was someone different, someone dangerous. Warriors joined him, not because they had to, but because they believed. Temüjin rewarded loyalty, shared spoils, gave opportunities. He didn't rule with fear alone. He ruled with vision. But not everyone supported him, especially Jamuka, once a brother, now a rival. Because there was one truth neither could ignore. There could only be one leader of the steppe. The storm is coming by his 30s. Temüjin was no longer just surviving. He was rising. The steppe was shifting. Alliances breaking. New powers forming. And at the center of it all was a man who had once been left to die. A man who learned that mercy is weakness. That loyalty is everything. That power must be taken, not given. The world didn't know it yet. But something unstoppable had begun. By the time Temüjin reached his 30s, he was no longer just surviving. He was becoming something far more dangerous. A force, not yet unstoppable, but no longer ignorable. The Mongolian steppe, once a chaotic web of tribes, had begun to shift around him. Power was no longer scattered. It was concentrating, and every leader on the steppe could feel it. Something was coming. A game of power. The steppe was not ruled by kings. It was ruled by strength, and strength had to be proven. Again, and again, and again. Tribal leaders didn't inherit power permanently. They held it only as long as they could defend it. Lose a battle, and you lost everything. Temüjin understood this better than anyone, because he had already lost everything once. He knew loyalty couldn't be assumed. It had to be maintained. So he built something different. Not just an army, a system. Rewriting the rules in traditional Mongol society, power came from bloodlines. If you were born noble, you led. If you weren't, you followed. No exceptions. Temüjin shattered that system completely. He promoted men based on merit, skill, discipline, loyalty. A shepherd's son could become a general. A noble could be reduced to nothing. This wasn't just radical. It was dangerous, because it threatened every traditional leader on the steppe. But it worked. Men who had been ignored all their lives suddenly had purpose, opportunity, a reason to fight harder than anyone else. And they did. The rise of legends among Temüjin's growing ranks were men who would later become legendary. One of them was Jib, a warrior who had once been his enemy. During a battle, Jib shot Temüjin's horse out from under him. A fatal mistake, or so it should have been. When captured, Jib didn't lie, didn't beg. He admitted exactly what he had done. Temüjin saw something in him. Not weakness, but honesty, courage. He spared him, and gave him a place at his side. Jib would go on to become one of the greatest generals in history. Another was Subutai, not noble, not wealthy, the son of a blacksmith. But his mind was unmatched. Where others saw battles, Subutai saw patterns. strategies, entire campaigns unfolding before they even began. Under Temüjin's system, men like this didn't stay hidden. They rose. Fast. The first major test, but power always attracts resistance. And Temüjin's greatest threat came from someone who knew him better than anyone else. Jamukha, his childhood friend, his blood brother, now his enemy. Jamukha believed in tradition, in noble lineage, in the old ways. To him, Temüjin wasn't a reformer. He was a threat to the natural order. So Jamukha gathered allies, formed a powerful coalition, and declared war. Defeat. In a lesson, the two forces met in battle, and Temüjin lost. Badly. His army scattered. His position weakened. For many leaders, this would have been the end. But not for Temüjin, because what happened next changed everything. Jamukha captured prisoners, young men, nobles, and instead of ransom or mercy, he executed them. Brutally, boiling them alive. A message, a warning, but it backfired, because even in a brutal world, there were limits. And Jamukha had crossed them. Warriors began to question him. Some defected, others hesitated. Meanwhile, Temüjin, even in defeat, gained something more valuable than victory. Respect. The strategy of loyalty. Temüjin learned something critical. Fear alone doesn't build empires. It creates resistance. But loyalty creates momentum. So after every victory, no matter how small, he rewarded his men. Not just leaders. Everyone. Spoils were shared. Opportunities were given. Men weren't just followers. They were invested. And that made them dangerous. Because now, they weren't fighting for Temüjin. They were fighting for themselves. Revenge against the past, one of Temüjin's first major campaigns, was against the Tatars. The same tribe that had poisoned his father. This wasn't just strategy. It was personal. The campaign was swift, efficient, brutal. The Tatars were defeated. But Temüjin didn't stop there. He made a decision that would define his reputation forever. He ordered the execution of every Tatar male above a certain height. Every man, every teenage boy, eliminated. The women and children were absorbed into his people. It was ruthless, calculated, and terrifying, but it achieved exactly what he wanted. No future rebellion, no lingering threat, only silence, alliance, and betrayal. At this stage, Temüjin wasn't alone. He had powerful allies. One of them was Togrul, leader of the Karaite tribe, a man who had once been close to Temüjin's father. Together, they were strong. But power is fragile, and trust even more so. Togrul's son began to fear Temüjin. He saw his rise, his growing influence, and he knew what it meant. Eventually, suspicion turned into action. Temüjin was lured into a trap, ambushed, nearly killed. His army scattered again. Everything he had built collapsed overnight. The lowest point, Temüjin fled, with almost nothing. A handful of loyal followers, less than 20 men. They reached a remote place, exhausted, hungry, broken. And there, something extraordinary happened. They drank muddy water from a lake and swore an oath, not of survival, but of loyalty, absolute loyalty. Those who stayed in that moment, when everything was lost, would be rewarded when everything was gained. These men would later form the core of his empire, because they had proven something rare. They stayed when leaving would have been easier. The return. Temüjin wasn't finished. He never was. He rebuilt, slowly, carefully, gathering strength again. And when the time was right, he struck. This time, there was no hesitation, no mercy. He attacked Togrul's forces, destroyed them, crushed the Karaite tribe completely. Togrul was killed. His son fled, and Temüjin absorbed everything. Their warriors, their resources, their power. Now, he was no longer a rising leader. He was the dominant force on the steppe. The final obstacle, only one major threat remained. The Naimans, wealthy, organized, confident. They believed Temüjin was just another warlord, another temporary storm. They were wrong. Temüjin didn't attack blindly. He used deception. At night, his army lit multiple fires, creating the illusion of a massive force. The Naimans hesitated, doubted, and in that hesitation, they lost. At dawn, Temüjin attacked, decisively, Overwhelmingly, the Naimans were defeated, their leader killed, their power shattered. The birth of a Khan by 1206, something had happened that had never happened before. The steppe was united, not loosely, not temporarily, but completely. Tribes that had fought for generations now stood under one banner. A great assembly was called, leaders gathered, rituals were performed, and Temüjin was given a new name, a name the world would never forget. Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. A new order, but Genghis Khan didn't just unite the tribes. He rebuilt them from the ground up. He broke the old clan system, mixed tribes together, created new units, based on numbers. 1,000, 10,000. Not family, not blood, only structure, only loyalty. This ensured one thing. No tribe could rebel alone, because they were no longer separate. They were one. Law and control. He introduced a law code. Strict, unforgiving, absolute. Loyalty was mandatory. Disobedience meant death. But there was another side. Women were protected. Religious freedom was allowed. Merchants were safe. This wasn't kindness. It was strategy, because stability builds power. The storm turns outward now. For the first time, the steppe was quiet. No internal wars. No tribal conflicts. Only one direction left. Outward. Genghis Khan stood at the center of a united nation. Disciplined, hungry, unstoppable. And he knew something the world didn't. The steppe was too small, too poor, to sustain what he had built. If his people were to survive, they would need more. More land, more wealth, more enemies. And so, he looked beyond the horizon. To China, to Persia, to lands that had never even heard his name. And he made a decision that would change history forever. The world would not ignore him. It would kneel. By the time Genghis Khan turned his gaze beyond the steppe, he wasn't looking for war. He was looking for inevitability. Because what he had built was not just an army. It was a machine. Precise, relentless, unforgiving, and above all mobile. The world had never seen anything like it. And it wasn't ready. The enemy that laughed to the east stood one of the most powerful empires on earth. The Jin dynasty, a civilization of massive cities, stone walls, millions of people, advanced weapons, and absolute confidence. To them, the Mongols were nothing more than scattered nomads, useful as mercenaries, irrelevant as enemies. So when Genghis Khan rose, they didn't panic. They sent a message, a demand. Submit, bow, accept their superiority. Genghis Khan listened, said nothing, mounted his horse, and rode away. That silence was the beginning of war. War without rules. In 1211, the Mongols invaded. Not like traditional armies. Not slowly. Not predictably. They moved like something unnatural. Fast. Untraceable. Every soldier carried multiple horses, switching mounts mid-journey, allowing them to travel distances that seemed impossible. 60, sometimes 80 miles a day. No heavy supply lines. No dependence on roads. They lived off the land, or took what they needed. And they didn't aim for glory. They aimed for collapse. The strategy of fear. Genghis Khan didn't attack the strongest cities first. He attacked everything around them. Villages, farms, supply routes. He burned the countryside, killed resistance, and drove survivors toward the cities. This created chaos. Refugees flooded inside. Food ran out. Fear spread. And then the Mongols arrived. At the gates. Calm, patient, offering a choice. Surrender or be erased. At first, most cities resisted. They trusted their walls, their numbers, their history. That trust destroyed them. When walls failed, the Mongols had never fought large, fortified cities before. But they adapted. Quickly, they captured engineers, forced them to build siege weapons, catapults, trebuchets, siege towers, everything needed to break walls that once seemed invincible. And when a city fell, the Mongols kept their promise. Total destruction. No mercy. No survivors. Men, women, children. Entire populations wiped out. Not out of rage, but calculation. Because word spread faster than armies. And soon, cities began surrendering without a fight. The mathematics of terror to the Mongols. Brutality was not chaos. It was strategy. Kill thousands to save time. Spare those who surrender to encourage obedience. Every action had purpose. Every massacre had meaning. And it worked. The Jin dynasty began to crumble, not just from military defeat, but from psychological collapse. The first victory by 1213, northern China was in chaos. Cities had fallen, armies destroyed. The emperor, desperate, sued for peace. He offered gold, silk, horses, even princess. Genghis Khan accepted, for now, because he understood something critical. This wasn't over. Empires don't forget humiliation. They rebuild, and when they do, they come back stronger. So he turned away, not to rest, but to prepare for something bigger. A new target emerges to the west, lay the Khwarezmian Empire. Vast, wealthy, powerful, stretching across Central Asia and Persia. At first, Genghis Khan had no intention of invading. He wanted trade, stability, connection. So he sent merchants, peaceful, unarmed. But what happened next changed everything. The mistake that doomed an empire, a Mongol trade caravan arrived at a border city. Otra, the governor, accused them of spying, seized their goods, executed them. This alone was enough to provoke war. But it got worse. Genghis Khan sent envoys, demanding justice. A simple request: hand over the governor. Make it right. The Shah of Khwarezm refused. And then, he made the worst mistake possible. He executed one of the envoys and humiliated the others. In Mongol culture, this was unforgivable. This was not insult. This was war. Preparation for destruction. Genghis Khan didn't rush. He planned, gathered intelligence, studied cities, routes, weaknesses. He assembled his largest army yet, over 100,000 men. And then, he moved. War at a different scale. In 1219, the invasion began. But unlike anything before it, this wasn't a single army. It was many, moving separately, striking simultaneously. Cities couldn't communicate. Armies couldn't coordinate. The empire was cut apart, piece by piece. The fall of great cities. Bokhara, a center of culture, learning, trade, fell. Genghis Khan entered the city, walked into its grand mosque, and delivered a message that echoed through history. I am the punishment of God. Whether he truly said it or not, the meaning was clear. This was not just conquest. This was annihilation. Samarkand followed, one of the richest cities in the world. Captured, broken, its defenders slaughtered, its wealth taken, its power erased. The hunt for a king. The Shah fled, city to city, running, hiding, watching his empire collapse behind him. But the Mongols didn't stop. Two generals, Jib and Subutai, pursued him across thousands of miles. Relentless, unstoppable, the Shah eventually died, alone, broken, on an island. His empire gone. Total collapse. The Khwarezmian Empire didn't fall slowly. It disintegrated. Entire regions were destroyed. Irrigation systems collapsed. Cities turned to dust. Millions died. And yet this wasn't chaos. It was controlled, because cities that surrendered early were spared. Their people lived, their knowledge preserved. Genghis Khan didn't destroy everything. He selected, kept what was useful, eliminated what resisted. The edge of the world. But the Mongols didn't stop there. They pushed further west, into unknown lands. The Caucasus, Eastern Europe. They defeated armies that had never even heard of them. At the Battle of the Kalka River, a coalition of Russian princes was annihilated, completely. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the Mongols vanished. They returned east, but they had learned something important. They had mapped the world, and they would return. A conqueror ages. By 1225, Genghis Khan was no longer young. He had conquered more land than anyone in history, from the Pacific to the edge of Europe. But he wasn't finished, because one thing remained, a promise. The Western Xia, a kingdom that had once betrayed him. He returned, even in his 60s, leading from the front, driving his army forward, determined to finish what he started. The final campaign. The campaign was brutal, systematic, complete. City after city fell. The emperor surrendered. But this time, there was no forgiveness. Genghis Khan ordered his execution. The message was clear: Betrayal is never forgotten. The end of the storm in 1227, during this campaign, Genghis Khan died, not in a palace, not in comfort, but in the field, on campaign, the way he had lived. The cause remains unknown. Injury, illness, accident. No one knows for certain. His body was taken back to Mongolia, in total secrecy. According to legend, anyone who saw the funeral procession was killed. His tomb remains undiscovered. Even today, what he left behind, most empires collapse when their founder dies. But not this one, because Genghis Khan had prepared, divided his empire, organized succession, built systems that didn't rely on one man. And so, instead of falling apart, it grew. Faster, further, stronger. Because what Genghis Khan created was not just an empire. It was momentum. The legacy of war. By the end of his life, the world had changed. Trade routes reshaped, cities destroyed, new powers rising, old ones erased. He was called many things: destroyer, conqueror, monster, visionary. But above all, he was something rare, a man who didn't just fight the world. He redesigned it. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, the world should have exhaled. Empires built on one man usually collapse with him. History proves it. Alexander the Great dies, his empire fractures. Attila the Hun dies, his power dissolves. That is the pattern. That is the rule. But this time, the rule broke. The empire that refused to fall, Genghis Khan, didn't just conquer land. He engineered continuity. Before his death, he divided his empire among his sons. Not randomly, strategically. Each received territory. But above them all stood one title: Great Khan, the supreme ruler. That role went to his third son, Ogidi Khan. He wasn't his father. Not as ruthless, not as legendary. But he didn't need to be, because the machine had already been built. And Ogidi understood how to run it. Expansion without the founder. Instead of slowing down, the empire accelerated. Ogidi completed what Genghis had started. The Jin dynasty, already broken, was finished. Northern China fell completely. But that was only the beginning, because now the Mongols looked west. Again, Europe meets the storm in 1237. Mongol armies entered lands that had never faced anything like them. The Russian principalities, cities like Vladimir, Kiev, Moscow, fell one by one, burned, crushed, subjugated. European armies fought back, bravely, but poorly coordinated, divided, unprepared. At the Battle of Legnica, European knights charged, confident, disciplined, and were annihilated. At Mohi in Hungary, the same result: complete destruction. The Mongols were now at the edge of Western Europe. Vienna was within reach. The continent stood on the brink of collapse. And then they stopped. The world saved by death, not by victory. Not by resistance, but by timing. Ogidi Khan died, and Mongol tradition demanded something absolute. Every royal prince must return home to elect the next great Khan. So the armies withdrew, not defeated, not pushed back, but recalled. Europe survived, not because it was stronger, but because it was lucky. Power struggles begin after Ogidi's death. The empire faced its first real test: succession. His widow ruled as regent. Then his son took power, but not for long. Internal rivalries grew. Branches of the royal family began competing, and eventually another ruler rose: Mongol Khan. Under him, the empire reached its absolute peak. The empire at its height, from Korea to Hungary, from Siberia to the Persian Gulf. No empire in history had ever been this large. Not connected, not continuous, not this powerful. Monk expanded further. He sent his brother, Hulagu Khan, west, and another brother, Kublai Khan, east. What followed reshaped civilizations. The fall of Baghdad in 1258. Hulagu Khan reached Baghdad, the heart of the Islamic world, a city of knowledge, science, culture. For centuries, it had stood as a symbol of intellectual power. It didn't stand for long. The Mongols besieged it, captured it, and destroyed it. Hundreds of thousands died. Libraries burned. Knowledge lost forever. The Abbasid Caliphate ended. Just like that. one of history's greatest centers of civilization, erased in days. The first true defeat, but for the first time, the Mongols met resistance they couldn't crush. In 1260, at the Battle of Ain Jalut, they faced the Mamluks of Egypt. Disciplined, experienced, prepared, and this time, the Mongols lost. Decisively. It wasn't just a defeat. It was a signal. The Mongols were not invincible. The fracture begins soon after. Mongol Khan died, and the empire faced its biggest internal conflict yet. Two brothers, two visions, one empire. Kublai Khan versus Erik Bok, civil war followed. And even though Kublai won, something had changed. The unity was gone. Four empires, not one. The Mongol Empire didn't collapse overnight. It divided into four major regions: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in Russia, each ruled by descendants of Genghis Khan, each powerful, but no longer united. The empires still existed, but not as one, a different kind of power, and yet, even divided, the Mongols changed the world. They didn't just conquer. They connected. Trade routes expanded. The Silk Road flourished. For the first time, it was possible to travel from Europe to China with relative safety. This era became known as the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. Merchants moved freely. Ideas spread. Technology traveled. Even people did, including one famous traveler, Marco Polo, who visited Kublai Khan's court and described a world Europeans could barely imagine. The cost of connection, but connection has consequences. Along with trade came disease. Many historians believe the Black Death, which devastated Europe, spread along Mongol trade routes, killing millions, reshaping societies. Once again, the Mongols changed the world, even without trying. The man behind the myth, so who was Genghis Khan? A hero? A monster? The answer is uncomfortable. He was both. He created laws protecting religious freedom and killed entire populations. He rewarded loyalty and punished resistance with annihilation. He built systems based on merit, but ruled through fear. He wasn't simple. He wasn't one thing. He was a product of a steppe, a place where survival demanded extremes. And he scaled those extremes to the level of empires. The DNA of a conqueror, there's another legacy, one that exists even today. Genetic studies suggest that millions of men carry a common ancestor linked to Genghis Khan's lineage. Whether directly him or his family is debated, but the scale is undeniable. His bloodline spread across continents, just like his empire. The empire that echoes even after fragmentation. The Mongol impact didn't disappear. It transformed. China was unified under the Yuan dynasty. Persia experienced cultural revival under Mongol rule. Russia was shaped by centuries of Mongol dominance. Trade networks influenced global economics. Military tactics changed forever. Mobility, speed, psychological warfare, all became essential. Because of them, the final question, so what remains? Cities destroyed? Yes. Millions dead? Yes. But also a world more connected than ever before. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer territory. He forced civilizations to interact, to exchange, to adapt. He accelerated history, violently, relentlessly, irreversibly. The man who never left today, his tomb remains hidden, somewhere in Mongolia, unfound, untouched, almost as if the land itself refuses to reveal him. But maybe that's fitting, because Genghis Khan was never meant to be contained. Not by borders, not by time, not even by death. His empire is gone, but his impact is everywhere. In trade, in warfare, in culture, in history itself. The truth, he was not just a conqueror. He was a turning point, a moment where the world shifted and never shifted back. And that is why, centuries later, we still speak his name. Not because of what he destroyed, but because of what he changed.